Hello everyone, Jim Wright with the Toro company here. Today we're going to demonstrate the installation of the Infinity Stealth Kit onto any Infinity sprinkler. The elements of the demonstration that are required: we have an Infinity Series sprinkler, we have the Stealth Kit, and the kit includes a rubber cover and support, the turf cup and support, a plug when using this with the trajectory style nozzle bases, 3 longer screws that hold the kit and cover in place, 1 longer screw that holds the turf cup and cap in place, a hold-up tool, and the installation instructions. The other items that we're going to use in the demonstration today, again, the riser hold-up tool, one of our selector keys, Phillips screwdriver, 5/16 nut driver, and the multi-purpose tool. And we also will need some form of a leveling device for demonstrating getting the sprinkler flush and level to grade. Okay, so the real benefits of the Infinity Stealth kits are, number one, there is real turf growing on top of the sprinkler. And the 3 primary benefits of that: the first is to prevent golf balls from coming down, hitting the top of the sprinkler and bouncing off, potentially out of play, and changing the outcome of the game. The second thing is that it is going to improve the beauty around a golf green. Today you'll see multiple black circles going all the way around, the tops of those sprinklers fully exposed. By placing the Stealth Kit in place and having turf growing right over the top of the sprinkler, that immediately beautifies the look of the green. And the third thing is it's going to reduce trip hazards. Many times the sprinklers will sink a little bit, and when that happens, people walking by potentially could trip and fall and get injured. So the 3 primary benefits: prevents golf balls from bouncing, increases the beauty around the green, and eliminates trip hazards. There are 2 different Stealth kits depending upon the nozzle base that it's going to be installed upon. The first is Stealth-D, which would be used on any of the nozzle bases that have dual trajectory capability. That would be all of the full circle sprinklers and the part circle with dual trajectory. The second kit is the Stealth-T, and the -T stands for trajectory nozzle base, with the ability to adjust the main nozzle from 7 to 30 degrees. Okay, so it's going to be really important to get some of the installation and adjustments done prior to installing the kit. It makes it a little bit easier to get that done. So we generally like to walk up to the sprinkler, lift, and then place the hold-up tool in its proper position. Now on the trajectory versions, that position is right above the inner nozzle, and this would allow you to take the cap off and keep the riser in the upright position. On the dual trajectory models, the tool goes into a slot right above the 2 back positions, and again, you can now take that cap off without worrying about the riser coming apart. Okay. Now with it in the up position, there are 2 things that we really should try to do first. The first one is to do an adjustment of the trajectory. If you know what the application is and you know that it's going to be set to 20 degrees, make that adjustment prior to putting the turf cup in place. You can do it afterwards, but it's a little easier if you can do it beforehand. The second thing is arc adjustment. So I'm going to determine the arc position of this sprinkler, and I'm going to make that adjustment before installing the turf cup. Okay. The other consideration is if there is any orientation to the compartment, to the smart access compartment, you may want to have this opening always facing away from the green, or you may want it always to be facing towards the green. That will allow you to know what direction it is after the turf is above if you ever had to gain access to it. So orientation of the sprinkler, we always like to try to keep them consistent all the way around the greens complex. Okay? All right, so we've removed the contents of the kits already. We've got all of the components that we need. The first thing that we're going to do on the trajectory versions, now remember that the sprinkler is now going to be about 2 inches lower than it would be normally. And because of that, there are a few things to consider. The first is that on the trajectory versions, we have an inner nozzle slot that is very, very close to the bottom now. And that inner nozzle slot could create some puddling around the sprinkler if water coming out of there hits the surrounding grass. So as a part of the kit, there is a nozzle plug that inserts into that opening and just snaps into place. So that gets put in and then just snaps into place. The second consideration is the angle of the inner nozzles. Again, because we are going to be lower than normal, and considering that the inner nozzle is attempting to place water close to the sprinkler out about 25 feet, because it's lower, we may end up with a wetter than desirable condition around the sprinkler head. So the second thing that we should consider doing is changing the angle of the inner nozzle. And I'll demonstrate that one on this one. It's might be a little easier to see. So the inner nozzles are always oriented in what we call the 6 o'clock position, where the lower opening is straight down. And that's intended to put water right close to the sprinkler. So if we are installing a stealth kit, what we're going to want to do is take that inner nozzle and move it to either the 8 o'clock position or even potentially the 9 o'clock position, which is going to minimize the amount of water right close to the sprinkler, but push that water just a little bit further out. So that's going to eliminate potentially some puddling of that. Okay, so make those adjustments first. Plug into the inner nozzle slot, and then an adjustment of the inner nozzle to get it to where it's putting less water right close to the sprinkler. Okay. All right, the next step is going to be removing the cover, and it's simply a matter of taking the 3 screws out that would normally be in the cover, and these screws will no longer be needed, so we can set those aside. These components are pre-assembled in the kit for you, but just showing how this goes. The support piece just drops over the rubber cover portion, and then this is going to orient onto the body so that the screw bosses line up with the screw bosses in the cover, and that this feature lines up with the selector feature. So I'm going to drop that down on there and drop that right into place. Then the 3 longer screws are installed using that 5/16 nut driver. Again, this is the same tool that we do the trajectory adjustment, that we can access and adjust all of our inner and intermediate nozzles. So this will then just thread down into place, tighten completely. And the outer portion of the rubber cover is now in place. Just to demonstrate the accessibility of the selector tool, again, that's how we turn the sprinkler either manually on, turn it manually off, or leave it in the automatic position. There is a reference boss right along the edge of the rubber cover, and that reference boss will give me an indication of where the access port is. And so with the selector tool, once I identify that, it's about 1/4 of an inch below the surface. So we would have to probe and remove a little turf there. And then the selector tool is going to push down through and get onto the selector, and now I can manually control the sprinkler. Okay. All right. Now the next step is to install the turf cup onto the top of the cap. And first thing we need to do is remove the screw holding the cap on. The shorter screw again is no longer required. The two parts of the kit that we need is the turf cup and the support. And again, these are going to be pre-assembled in the kits, but for demonstration purposes, this just slides down in and goes around the trajectory adjustment point. So it's typically easier to take the cap off of the sprinkler, and what we're going to do is this feature on the bottom of the cup is going to go right into the slot, the pull-up slot that's in the cap. So it's a matter of just lining that up so that it sits nice and flush, and then we can put this back onto the riser. And then using the longer screw, tighten the turf cup right down on top of the sprinkler. Okay, so that's basically the installation of the kit. So now that we have that installed, I'm going to lift up, remove the hold-up tool, and there's what the finished sprinkler would look like. Now once this is ready to install onto the swing joint, you've excavated the dirt, and the swing joint is now available to tighten the sprinkler up to. So we're going to thread it into place and then position the body in the orientation that you want it around the green. The swing joint then is going to allow you to raise and lower the sprinkler to get it to the proper height. And to determine that, we're going to use some type of a level that would be positioned on the surface of the surrounding turf, so that I can make sure that the top of the turf cup is perfectly aligned, both flush to grade and level to grade. And you can use a level of some sort. You can use a piece of PVC pipe, a 2x4, anything that would allow you to get this onto the edge of the surrounding turf surfaces and give you an indication of where that height should be. At that point, once you've got it in position, now it's a matter of backfilling all around the sprinkler and tamping and getting that soil compacted nicely to prevent any sinking of the sprinkler over time. Okay. Now, once that is in position, we've got basically dirt up to this level. The next step is to install a piece of sod, and that's going to come right up and around and come right up to the outer edge of the rubber cover. We don't want to have it pushing hard in, because then that might prevent the riser from retracting fully. So we're basically just going to bring it up to basically a net fit right around the outer cover. Okay. Now once that's in place, I would then turn on the sprinkler. Turn on the sprinkler manually. I would do the final adjustment of the trajectory adjustment and arc adjustment while the sprinkler is running. That will allow me to get those fine-tuned prior to doing the final turf installation into the turf cup. So once that's completed, we're going to take a pretty typical turf cup cutter that would cut a piece of sod, the depth of this, which is just about 2 inches, and That turf cup, it's going to be a little bigger than the space that's available here, so there's going to be some trimming required, and then that piece, that plug of sod, will then install into the inside of the turf cup, and then it gets pressed into place, providing a nice continuous layer of turf across the top of the sprinkler head. And that's all there is to it.